What's up Sega fans, Dan the Mega Driver here, and in this short video we're going to be talking about the Sega Rally tribute game Overjump Rally. With Pandemonium Gaming's recent epic Sega Rally documentary and a few follow-up discussions, including an upcoming one from James and I, not to mention numerous gameplay videos from us and the rest of the Shiro group as we all compete for the best times, there's never been a better time to discuss Sega Rally. And it seems that Alessandro Siassi is aware of this too, as he released a new video to promote his racing project Overjump Rally. For those who don't know, Overjump is a Sega Rally inspired racer. So far, Alessandro has created the forest track in Unreal Engine 5, and I think you'll agree, it looks beautiful. Alessandro first marketed his project as a remake, though he later clarified that it was actually a homage or tribute to differentiate it from the original, though his Steam listing still describes it as a remake. Either way, there's still numerous references to Sega Rally in his game, including a lovely looking twin arcade cabinet. While I've not played Overjump Rally, I thought it would be interesting to compare the latest gameplay footage to the original Sega Saturn port of Sega Rally. To do this, I played Sega Rally in time attack mode and used the cheat code to turn off the on-screen displays. Now playing like this was a bit of a challenge. Because I couldn't track my gear changes, I had to play in automatic, and I usually play in third person, not first person. But even that aside, I think I was able to match the gameplay in the Overjump demo fairly closely. As you can see, it's actually a fairly close approximation to the original game at this speed. Both of the cars complete their respective circuits at around the same time. Many of the checkpoints actually hit at similar times as well, and the overall structure is certainly similar. But this is Sega Rally, a game of fine margins where players sweat to shave precious milliseconds off of their time. As such, similar may not be enough. Perfection may be required for Sega Rally veterans to truly embrace any remake. Available driving lines, trajectories, and overall car handling could, in theory, be impacted by even the slightest changes in course design, which is why this should be an interesting comparison. For the purposes of this comparison, we're not going to focus on any of the visual elements here, since the graphical levels and styles are obviously significantly different. Instead, this is purely based on the observations around the makeup of the track. So, let's really get into the dirt here and break down just how accurate Overjump Rally is. So from the start, the most obvious difference is with the track width. It may be a matter of perspective, but throughout the race the track seems just far too narrow in Overjump Rally. This is something that almost certainly will have an impact on passing rivals and drifting in the full game. As the original track starts, there is a very light chicane that isn't signposted by the navigator, which you can angle yourself to drive through in a straight line. Due to the reduced track width, this chicane seems a little bit more pronounced in Overjump, as it appears to be too tight for the driver to actually take a straight line through in this instance. And then as we get to the first navigated turn, we see that the grass verges that are present and drivable in the original games are much less conspicuous, and sometimes appear to be missing completely as the fences and the rocks reach all the way out to the road's edge. Driving on these verges was a viable approach in the original game, as demonstrated here by this world record holding Sega Rally Championship player. As we come to the second long easy right, it looks far gentler than the original. The maybe from your co-driver is the first sign that this may be a trickier turn and you will have to alter your approach to it. That doesn't seem to be the case in Overjump Rally, as the speed and trajectory appear to be similar to the prior turn. Next up is perhaps the most iconic part of the track, the tunnel. On approach, the elevation appears a little bit gentler in the Overjump demo, though we can't say if this will actually impact the driving or the gameplay in instance, but one thing I did notice is that the distances from the entrance to the turn and then to the exit all seem to be slightly different in Overjump, though the turn itself seems to be correct. And that's a theme as we get to the midsection of this track. While there are some small differences, the key turns do appear to be completely correct. For example, the small verge on the left as you leave the tunnel in the lead up to the iconic medium left is a little less pronounced, but the left turn itself, which Pandemonium described as perhaps his favourite turn in the game, seems to be completely right. The same can be said as the next long medium right. It makes sense to prioritise these iconic segments in terms of accuracy. It comes with something of a caveat though, because the visuals in this instance are obfuscated by some sort of storm. either a tornado or a dust storm or a fire, at this time of day, at this time of year, localised entirely in this section of the track, it does make a true comparison difficult, but what I can glean from the car movements is that the turns do actually seem completely correct. The hairpin too, iconic as it is, appears to be completely correct here, and though the narrower track is evident here too, it's much less noticeable and in keeping with the spirit of the original game. Though the narrow track does mean that wall bumps may not be a valid tactic here. Now we're into the final third of the course now, and from what I could see, there are some noticeable differences. The K left, for example, straight after the hairpin, doesn't appear to be as sharp. What is a tricky turn in the original game is represented less ominously in Overjump, as the driver glides around the bend effortlessly at speed. The same could be said for the next three turns. The medium right, followed by the easy left, easy right chicane, all appear, at least visually from what I can see in the video, significantly less dramatic than in the original game. Interestingly, it's this section here where we see a change in road surface, swapping the dirt in the original for asphalt. Given how Sega Rally's handling and grip can alter based on the track type, it's an interesting difference and could change how you approach those turns. And as we get into the home stretch, the final two turns are pretty much nailed on. Even the track width is correct here, and that oh so satisfying feeling as you bend around the two consecutive tricky turns would appear to be completely correct. The start finish line here seems a lot further away. Now the Saturn version was a little further forward than the arcade, but this seems so much more further back, perhaps a correction for all the smaller differences that you see up and down the track. All in all, it's a great achievement to replicate the forest track with this level of detail and visual fidelity. However, a number of the turns do feature quite a few differences, while the changes to the road surface and the track width do result in what looks to be a significantly different game from the original Sega Rally. And sure, they sound like nitpicks, but in such a tight and focused game that players have become so intimately familiar with over 30 years, they do pose to alter the core experience. And I suppose that's the existential question of a remake, isn't it? Should it adhere 100% to the original, or to what extent are these sort of differences allowed? And if it doesn't match the source material, is it really a remake, or is it just a tribute? I can see now why Alessandro changed his description a few times. Now there have been numerous other tributes which players have enjoyed without the developers or publishers overtly stating that the inspiration of those games was Sega Rally. As I mentioned earlier, if you're going to remake Sega Rally, in my eyes it has to be perfect, and any less than that, it isn't really Sega Rally. Just like Daytona CCE isn't really considered to be Daytona by true fans of the original game, and while that different take on that classic was developed and published by Sega with the Daytona name, that's something this remake unfortunately doesn't have the luxury of. And in my opinion, the Sega Rally name probably shouldn't be used to market it if it's not to be remade with accuracy and if it's not an official product. Either of those two would be fine, but unfortunately Overjump is neither of those things at the moment. What Overjump Rally is though, is a visually impressive racer, and from what we've seen so far, it seems to have the gameplay that approximates how the classic Sega Rally games feel. Much like other rally games, I think that this could be an enjoyable game in the vein of Sega's classic, and on that basis, it could and should stand on its own, without using the Sega Rally name so overtly. Either way, I'm interested to play this one and see how it turns out, and I think this comparison has actually been quite fascinating. Hopefully you found it interesting too, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you excited for Overjump Rally? Is it really a remake, or just a really cool looking tribute? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for more Sega Guys goodness, and until next time, we will see you on the Sega side.